Welcome back. President Biden will address world leaders at the United Nations General Assembly today. This is his last major speech before the UN. It comes as conflicts are escalating across the globe, including in the Middle East, where tensions are on the rise between Israel and Hezbollah. The Pentagon announced yesterday plans to send additional troops to the region, 24. The Wall Street Journal reporting that the, quote, additional forces are roughly 24 troops who could help in the event of an evacuation. They need to get Americans out of Lebanon as well. Iranian President Pezeshkian is also set to address the UN General Assembly this afternoon. Joining me now is Iowa Congressman Zach Nunn. He's the member of the House Financial Services and the member of the Country Caucus. He's also a U.S. Force Colonel. Congressman, thanks very much for being here this morning. Your reaction to what's taking place overnight in the U.S. and how these tensions are escalating between Israel and Hezbollah, so much so that we're sending 24 additional troops to the Middle East.
Well, Maria, this comes on the heels of just a failed Biden foreign policy plan, one that will only be replicated by a no-plan Kamala Harris. Look, I'm a veteran of the Afghan war. We helped evacuate folks out of that last flight out of Afghanistan. I do not want to see this played out again in Lebanon, where Americans are left behind by a U.S. government who does not have a plan in place. Right now, Israel has to defend itself, not just against Hezbollah and the Houthis and Hamas, but against Iran itself, who's going to be sharing that same stage with President Biden, the same Iran who has taken out an assassination attempt against President Trump, the third assassination attempt in as many months, to try and decapitate real American leadership that President Trump has shown in securing both the Middle East, striking ISIS, and enforcing and supporting our ally Israel. The Biden administration, however, has taken a very different tone. This is one of abdication of responsibility, both in Afghanistan, which led to Russia's involvement, and now one not standing up to an Iran with $80 billion in illicit oil being sold through Biden's failed sanction plan, where I've worked hard on the House Financial Services Committee to really crack down on Iranian sanctions. But this is what's fueling exactly Hezbollah's ability to strike Israel today. And the United States clearly doesn't have a plan not only to stop it, but at this point to even protect U.S. citizens trapped in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, voters are watching this as well with, 42 days until Election Day. Former President Trump spoke to farmers last night concerned by the China threat to U.S. agriculture at an event yesterday in Smithton, Pennsylvania. Listen to this.
The first thing I'd do is my first call, I'm going to call up President Xi. I'm going to say, you have to honor the deal you made. We made a deal. You'd buy $50 billion worth of American farm product, and I guarantee you he will buy it 100%. He will buy it.
Congressman, what are your thoughts on the state of the race right now?
Look, I'm a guy from Iowa, and I'm from an ag state on the ag committee. First of all, the Biden administration has offered no trade policy, particularly for ag, at any time during the last 3 years. We have a complete failure at USDA to actually show leadership here. President Trump is highlighting a $50 billion purchase agreement that was committed to by the Chinese and the U.S. Just in the last 3 years, one that drove up commodity prices, drove down prices for families when they went to the grocery store, and equally important, helped empower America's farmers to be the most successful on the world stage. I'm hearing from families right now, including in my home state of Iowa, where, the cost of eggs is up 40%. A gallon of milk, nearly twice what it was 3 years ago. These are things that have a direct impact on families like yours and mine, Maria, just to be able to survive. Here's an opportunity, a vision to have a good trade policy with China, one of the largest markets in the world, to actually be able to help grow and produce right here in America so that America and Iowa's farmers can both feed and fuel the world.
Yeah, well, you heard Kamala Harris's answer to all of this. She claims that companies are price gouging, and that's the reason that you're seeing groceries the way that they are in terms of much more expensive than anything else. What about that? I mean, you just said, eggs is an issue. Yeah, you're right. I mean, eggs are up sharply. Bread is up sharply. Eggs up 28% just over the last year. So food inflation is there and it's real, but Kamala Harris has not attributed any of her spending, $7 trillion in spending in the last 4 years, to any of this.
That's right. I mean, really, we have runaway government inflation being caused by the Biden-Harris team here. Putting a price cap on here hurts America's growers and producers. Look, most family farmers are going to be price takers, not price makers, meaning they have to take whatever the market's going to set. Putting an artificial ceiling in here by some red tape regime out of Washington, D.C., not only hurts the actual growers, it hurts that entire community that's supporting that family farm, that's supporting the ability for the American people in Main Street to be successful. The reality is free market principles are the best way to drive forward, and letting Americans have more money in their pocket, they'll invest that in their family, their farm, and their community.
Well, let me get your take on the money issues. The Financial Services Committee is expected to grill all 5 members of the Securities and Exchange Commission today, including the chairman, Gary Gensler, during an oversight hearing. Ahead of the hearing, Republicans on the committee and the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee sent a letter to Gensler demanding that the agency rescind its staff accounting bulletin 121, which allegedly upends custody rules for digital assets, weakens consumer protections, and stifles financial innovation. Congressman, tell us more about this letter, what you're expecting to hear during the hearing today. Have you heard back from Gary Gensler yet?
Yeah, so Maria, I was proud to author this letter and talk about the worst of D.C., that of a red tape state that tries to overwhelm both our Main Street businesses as well as our communities with government regulation well beyond what Congress has empowered the SEC and other federal agencies to do. A complete rollback on these is essential. We've talked with Gensler. I look forward to grilling him this week, but I also want to call out what the other commissioners have already highlighted, that he has become a rogue agent here. He's not listening to us. He's not listening to the commissioners. Hopefully, he'll listen to the American people today, because we're going to detail the amount of harm that he has done just in his massive amount of nearly 1,000 pages of new regulation being placed on small and hometown businesses that drive up costs for everybody in compliance, in billable hours, and a tax on the ability for a business to be successful here in America.
Well, it's a great point, certainly, and it does stifle business when you've got all of these rules and lawsuits, et cetera, coming at you in terms of corporate America. Meanwhile, the House Rules Committee opting against voting for the bipartisan government funding bill last night. After GOP opposition, House Republicans now are expected to bring up the legislation for a floor vote later this week under a procedure known as suspension of the rules. Congressman, what do you want to say about this? House Speaker Mike Johnson will have to rely on Democrats now, once again, to pass the continuing resolution with 2/3 majority. The bipartisan funding agreement would fund the government through December 20th. It includes $231 million for the U.S. Secret Service, with the condition that the agency has to cooperate with congressional investigations. Incredible that you have to put that in there. After 2 failed assassination attempts against Trump. It omits the SAVE Act, of course. That would have helped secure upcoming elections by preventing non-citizens from voting. But here we are, Congressman, with evidence of voter rolls needing to be cleaned up.
That's right. So, Washington needs to start doing a lot more like Iowa families and Iowa farmers and balance their books, pay off their credit card, don't run up debt, and make sure that money turns back to the American people. I was proud to pass the last CR that had SAVE included on it to make sure that we had free and fair elections here in the United States. The reality is, going forward here, I spoke with Speaker Johnson last night, and the important aspect of this is that we've had 2 assassination attempts on the president that have almost been successful, a third that was right on the cusp. We've got to hold the Secret Service accountable. Allowing for an additional nearly $230 million to go to those frontline agents to protect the president and to be able to protect each other is essential. And that's one of the things, as we head into this election, we make sure that we take care of them.
So are you voting against it then?
No, I'll be supporting this to be able to make sure that we have Secret Service covered going forward and that we have our military troops, our Customs and Border Patrol paid through this. It's one of the reasons I'm working with other members to make sure that our military forces are paid no matter what the Senate does, whether they fail to pass this or not, that we have our essential services covered.
All right, we'll leave it there. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thank you, sir.
Always, Maria. Thank you so much.
All right, Zach Nunn joining us. Stay with us. We'll be